Okay, should I start, Heiner?
Sure.
I see you're on mute. I guess that's my cue.
Yes.
So thank you very much, ASIA, for having us and giving us this opportunity to present this. It's very exciting to be shortly before our go live of version 1.0. And we're entering our phase 3, where the focus will be on implementations within each of our companies. And we can go into more on what we'll be doing in the future later on in the presentation. So on the next slide, you see who we are and what we want to talk about today. I'm Sheila Eltz, and I'm Master Data Manager at Bayer Pharmaceuticals. Here we've shifted over from regulatory to data science and AI, so hopefully we'll also be shifting more towards implementing this ontology as a technology as well and connecting more to other data domains. Heiner is a co-founder and CEO of ACCURIDS, and I'm sure when he takes over, he can also introduce himself. And then in the next few slides, we want to give an overview of the IDMP Ontology and then show how it's aimed and planned and some already to a certain extent being used in pharma. And then Heiner will give a demo of the IDMP knowledge graph with certain data already in there, like the G-SRS and WHO drug, and from EMA, the SPOR data, as well as FHIR. And then we would really like to just talk to you about what needs there might be from the FDA and the NIH for using the IDMP Ontology and what those next steps might be. So you see a screenshot from my phone. I was in Michigan at the time, which is why you see Michigan there. It was also in the evening, so you see all the lights lit up. I was looking for a photo online that I could steal without having to worry about any rights, and then I realized I could just do a screenshot. Because what I was thinking about is that we're so used to every day being able to ask questions, whether it's Siri or ChatGPT or Alexa, whoever you ask when you need to know something, and we're getting used to getting answers right away. It's not necessarily the case with our products, and even within our pharma companies, when we really need the information on our products, it might be a matter of Excels and SharePoints and PowerPoint presentations with the most up-to-date information we need, as well as legacy systems, and trying to get all that information harmonized and even know, is it really the same object we're talking about? And so I wanted to use this example because Thomas Heuer, back in 1993, said what we really need to do is harmonize our terminologies and also our ontologies. And then he founded Siri before he sold it to Apple. And so now we're at an exciting point where we're building a product data model in the format of an ontology, and then looking at the different domains from which we need to harmonize the terminologies and languages and data models. On the next slide, you see what the ontology looks like right now. This is a screenshot. It's, I think, 76. It's around 70-something ontologies actually in this network you see here. And in the future, we're looking at building this out into further ontologies, but there's more on that later as well. So on the next slide, you see what the basis is for that. I'm not sure if everyone in this meeting is familiar with the IDMP standards. It's the identification of medicinal products. They're actually a set of the 5 standards you see represented here in the different layers. We have 11615 and 6 are the basic, really the main standards for the conceptual data model, that is the product data model. And then you see the substances as well as the dosage forms and the strengths that are added to that in the 3 other standards. There are also technical specifications that come into play with more detail on implementing the IDMP standards. But this is what the basis is, especially the 11615, but also for substances, the 11238, that are modeled in the ontology based on use cases and also together between the SMEs from different pharma companies as well as ontology engineers. Yes, so on the next slide, you see how we see this and why we see we need this, because already European Medicines Agency has been producing or publishing an implementation guidelines, and then you see, okay, there is interpretation that goes into this. We do have many different contexts that we need to bridge and different languages and terminologies. And so we see the ontology for IDMP as somewhat of a Rosetta Stone in the middle, where everyone can connect their concepts to the concepts of IDMP, and in doing this, have less work in integrating the data across the different domains. On the next slide, you see the conceptual data model that is from 11615 on the right-hand side, and we started down in the orange part, which is substances, and then really worked. That was our MVP for the first 6 months. And so wherever you see a dot, you see the different use cases and the color coding going along with the use cases on the left, how we worked. And so really we took the domains that we decided we wanted to work within, and had the SMEs providing the information. And from the substances, we branched out to the manufacturing part so that we could bridge between regulatory and manufacturing, and the therapeutic indication you see in the purple part, the clinical particulars. And so this is how we've been working, and you see in the backlog, we're looking now towards pharmacovigilance, which is of course the original use case for IDMP is patient safety, is the reason we need to be able to very clearly and unambiguously identify every aspect of the product data model, of our product, with product data model. And so on the next slide, we have just a few highlights, just most recently that we've been doing. Our releases have been on track. We actually have 0.7, I believe, right now. And we're headed towards, in the beginning of January, releasing the version 1.0, which is ready for production. We've had many different POCs that we've been able to implement and work on, and some of these are also, as I mentioned, for patient safety with pharmacovigilance with food drug, but also with FHIR compatibility and a few others. The number 4, and I don't know if this was already reported in this group, but I've kicked off this right here, this approved work item, the technical specification for the IDMP Ontology, which will be describing the methodology and framework that we've been developing all along, and that has really come along very well and stood the test of time, especially in the governance framework, in the need to have the right stakeholders on board. This was kicked off in September by me, and Veda is my co-lead. You might know Veda. He used to be at the FDA, which is where he was when he wrote these standards, the 11615 and 6. And he has just recently started working as Vice President for Regulatory Policy and Intelligence at Birmingham. And so we'll be working on this. And on the next slide, you see a diagram that I submitted together with the Form 4. Heiner, if you can go to the next slide. This is a diagram that's in the Form 4 and will be a part of the technical specification with a lot more detail, of course. I took all the text out just for the sake of presentation to show that in the ontology, the IDMP ontology, it really contains everything else we need at the ISO level. And so we have the glossary, which will be a new technical specification, which will be the harmonized terminology that we need for IDMP, and we already have this in the ontology, and so whatever work that working group comes up with will then be updated in the ontology. The conceptual model is already there in the ontology because this is the basis for our modeling. The logical model that was just decided at our meeting in Arlington in November will be an annex to the conceptual model rather than a specific or separate technical specification. But in doing all this, what we're really looking for is harmonizing our terminology, our common understanding in terms of what the classes, the data classes actually mean, and connecting them. And then in the logical model, we look at the actual data structures and harmonizing those. And with the ontology, we're looking at how to actually then bridge the different implementation approaches so that we can harmonize that as well, with the main goal of really expanding and ensuring the adoption of the IDMP standards. Did you want to take over here, Heiner? This might be a good spot.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sheila, for this intro. The IDMP ontology is published as an open source ontology and an MIT open source license. And if you go to the Pistoia Alliance website and you go to projects and IDMP ontology, then if you scroll down to the very end, then there are 4 links. And this Git repository is where the ontology is also published and available. And there are further resources also on the documentation. Just that if you're interested to get really deep dive, then you can go there. Now, the IDMP ontology is just a semantic data model. And in order to answer questions in pharma that provide business value, like, for example, which substances have a common active moiety, or which products contain a certain substance like titanium dioxide, we need to fill the ontology with data. And that's this IDMP data graph. And together, this forms the IDMP knowledge graph. And with that, and of course, here we talk about many millions of objects, while in the ontology, there's several hundred concepts, but not let's say, not that large. No? It covers the ISO standards. And in total, I think it's about 1,000 concepts or so that we need to cover with that. And we take a use case driven approach, as explained by Sheila, that we take those questions and then verify that the ontology plus the data can be used to provide the answers to the questions. And this we do over time with more and more data sets in different organizations, so in the pharma organizations, but also with public data. And with this process, we mature the ontology, because every time we implement a new use case, we a little bit refine and augment the ontology, and over time, this is how we reach maturity. And now, after 1.5 years, we'll publish the release 1.0 that is fairly mature already and ready for production use. And the different pharma companies implement that also internally. I will not go in all the details here. I just want to give you an impression on the breadth and the different use cases that the different companies take. It's always a individual decision, of course, in the individual situation in the organizations of where the biggest value is and what can be achieved in an efficient way. So it's a bit of comparison on also where's the business value, how easy can that be implemented. As an example, AbbVie uses the SMPCs. So this is semi-structured or unstructured information, and they extract from that the IDMP ontology concept and structured data, which is then used for automation of reporting and content authoring in a structured way that conforms with EMA requirements. And a similar style, this could, for example, also be used with FDA vocabularies. Amgen, and you will see this again and again, is a similar approach. Amgen has a platform that's called Enterprise Data Fabric. And in that Enterprise Data Fabric, they connect data from many different operational systems that the people use in their daily business processing. And they connect that there in a semantic layer or knowledge graph with the IDMP ontology. And this then brings a 360 view that combines the different perspectives from the different functions in their organization. And this 360 view allows them then to realize all kinds of different use cases and supporting digital processes and analytics capabilities. A very similar approach you see here from AstraZeneca. In Bayer, we looked at SAP data and RIM data and connected that to SPOR substances, G-SRS substances, and internal master data management. And what you see here is that we will not be able to change SAP and how they name concepts or how they structure the data, but we can align that to a shared vocabulary, a shared understanding of the data, of the definitions, and ease data usage through that IDMP ontology. Boehringer connects uses the IDMP ontology to also connect master data with supply chain data, so that they can, for example, analyze the impact of, for example, if a country is hit by a hurricane, what is the impact on the manufacturing, on the supply chain? Where do they have suppliers for which materials that go into which products, and which way maybe alternative suppliers? So this is an important case, of course, also the shortage management. GSK connects supply chain data as well with, or manufacturing data also with RIM data, and they use the IDMP ontology to identify the mappings between the material identifiers in SAP to the substance identifiers in their regulatory system. J&J connects the substance data end-to-end in their organization, and especially interested in the more early research for drug target discovery. At Merck, they already had a substance ontology and connected that to different systems, and Merck is now updating that to the IDMP ontology and also using the IDMP ontology aligned G-SRS data graph. At Novartis, we connected data from multiple different SAP systems to a harmonized IDMP compliant representation of the whole product portfolio. And this is used, for example, also for falsified medicines reporting. And jumping over Pfizer, because they still needed to find a semantic engineer. In Roche, they see this as a way to for the digital transformation and regulatory, and there we connected the regulatory master data hub to the public data from G-SRS and SPOR, and showed how they can then better find and analyze their regulatory data. And also, we tested the IDMP ontologies with authorities, so with FDA G-SRS data, with EMA, SPOR, and EU-SRS data, with the World Health Organization, with HUDRAG, with UNICOM, which is a project in Europe that connects multiple national competent authorities. And we also implemented a feasibility proof to convert FHIR messages into the IDMP knowledge graph. And this is important because FHIR is set by the EMA as the messaging data exchange standard, and also by the FDA. FHIR is one of the standards that are used for exchange, or set for that. And of course, also in these collaborations, we learn and improve the IDMP ontology. And that's important because this also shapes then how the ontology looks like now. And with that, I go quickly into the demo and just looking at the time. So Sheila started with the question, and I have here an example question that I just asked ChatGPT. What is the what packagings exist for the Clyra product? And as you see here, Chat directly asks, it starts with, as of my last knowledge update, and it explains a little bit about Clyra, but more than that, there are blisters with 28 tablets is not reported. Now, if we run the same question against the knowledge graph with the IDMP ontology, then we get an answer that is more precise. And the added advantage again is then that we actually have references for that. So for example, we see also it's in 28 tablet blisters, but we also see the boxes and the SKUs. And we can click on that. Oops, that's the wrong link. Now I need to recompute the answer. It takes a while to let's say that the LLM is interacting with the knowledge graph to figure out what is CLIRA, what is packaging, and query the knowledge graph. But with the sources, we can actually then go back and verify where that information is coming from. So it's not a statistical based answer, it's a fact-based answer. And that's very important if we deal with regulatory data or with pharmaceutical data in general, that we can always go back and understand where the answer is generated from. With 5 more seconds, otherwise we go back to that in a second. And I first look at the IDMP ontology. But here you see that, and actually here that, no, these are all SPOR references. Yeah, maybe that's all, but but basically here we link back into the knowledge graph. In this case, these are EMA resources that are not in this example instance. As you see here, this is a quite recent development. I go back to the things that are already published. So this is the Pistoia Alliance instance of ACCURIDS that we are running, and what we have here in this graph database is that we have here on the one hand the ISO IDMP ontology. So you see here, for example, substance, the ISO standard around that, the medicinal products, the pharmaceutical products, etc. And these are all ontology modules that together form the IDMP ontology. We also have here G-SRS, and this is from the FDA, and this is again a knowledge graph that is aligned with the IDMP ontology. And as well, we have, for example, HUDRUG or other reference systems here. And for example, from EMA, there's a lot of controlled vocabularies in there, and substances and organizations, for example. Now, when I want to look into the IDMP ontology, so for example, ISO, in the substance standard, for example, then I can see here, for example, chemical substance, look for that concept from the ISO standard, and I see that this is in the ISO standard, but also even in NCIT, which is in, I think, FDA or FDA-related terminology. And we can go there and see how chemical substances are classified. And we also see the definitions. And in this case, both NCIT and our have actually the same definition, because also NCIT reuses ISO IDMP definitions. But what we have additionally is here in the ISO model, and I just focus on that one for a second, we have the references to the ISO standards. And that's important, of course, if people want to see the exact definitions of the concepts and understand where these definitions are coming from. And yeah, this is the say, and what you would also see here is that say the different classifications should be looked at. The right one, yeah. I'll go back to that in a second. Now the ontology gives the structure and say the yes. And if I want to then now align that data, so for example, I'm using in G-SRS, I'm looking for amlodipine. Then I see that amlodipine is defined in many of the different standards, but for example, also here in G-SRS. And let me just look for the actual substance, because amlodipine appears also just as labels. Type chemical substance. then I can look into that concept like IMDP, and it is linked now in the ontology to the corresponding definition so that I unambiguously know what I'm looking at here. So in this case here at a chemical substance, and we have linked there also the data from G-SRS to that from EU-SRS and also from the SPOR substances. And in the data, all this is here coming from the also is related to the ISO standards. So let me just focus here on G-SRS for a moment. For example, this active moiety relationship is something that is defined in the IDMP ontology, and G-SRS provides the information that amlodipine is the active moiety of these other substances. Yeah, and now this allows me then that I can answer questions, for example, as I've shown before, give me all the substances that have a shared active moiety, etc. Now, G-SRS is one data set, but as said, we have also worked with data from the World Health Organization. And as an example here, I've saved one search on the pharmaceutical products. And what you see here, and this is maybe for those who don't know, so the World Health Organization is leading the Global Identification Working Group, and as part of that, they have the mandate to create global substance identifiers and also global pharmaceutical product identifiers. Now, the thing is that with the pharmaceutical products, you can identify them on different levels of granularity. For example, just using the active substance, like in this case here for goserelin acetate, that's the level 1 of the pharmaceutical product, but sometimes it's also on a more granular level. And if I want to see, for example, here, all the pharmaceutical products that have the same active substance, goserelin acetate, I see here that we have different levels with different strengths, but all these products share some similarity, and that's why they are all related to the same level 1 PHP ID. And if I go there and in the details, then we see here that all the information is structured in a is represented in a fully structured way, with the strengths, with the numerator, all according to the ISO standards. And then the additional thing is that we reference also existing vocabularies, like, for example, from SPOR, the units of presentation here, that there's an implant or other presentation forms. And with that, we can link similar products, as you see here. These are all similar products, and that's what in ISO they refer as the PHP ID sets. And now I'm quickly going back to that. I know this question now we already looked at. The FHIR transformation is maybe the last small thing that I try to demonstrate. And so here we can take a FHIR message, and we have tested it with a FHIR message that we downloaded from the EMA electronic application form portal. We tested it with a Bayer example and also with a Pfizer example, but here I will use a anonymized example. These FHIR messages are quite large XML or JSON documents. In this case, these are XML documents, and I can load that here and then transform that. And with that transformation, we basically recognize in the FHIR message different things from the ISO standards, from IDMP, and you see here what we see in the FHIR message, and we find there, for example, marketing authorizations, excipient information, marketing authorizations, etc. And this then directly becomes part of the knowledge graph. Yeah, and this again then can be used for question answering, as we've seen, but again in a fact-driven manner. And with that, I would think that I leave it for now. The question answering, of course, is a quite hot topic. It's quite interesting to see and compare the things with the statistical and knowledge-based approach. And I think that there's quite a lot of potential make the ontology and knowledge graph topics more accessible to broad business user groups. Maybe Sheila, you have the best orientation here in this network of ISO IDMP collaborators.
Yeah, as you see in the lower right-hand corner, this is a borrowed slide, let's say, from Panayotis from the EMA, but it tries to show a very wide, very broad, I guess, a big table. If you bring everyone to the table who is involved with the adoption of IDMP standards, you see them all here. Where we have had already direct contact working on use cases, you can start in the upper left with HL7 for the FHIR standards, and then ISO and the global IDMP working group is what we've been mentioning, the work together with the WHO, UMC, who are leading that global IDMP working group. And they've been hosting transatlantic workshops with both FDA and EMA together, but also now some more national competent authorities, as well as some industry representation, with the main goal really of harmonizing the implementation of these standards so that it's globally harmonized. And then, as we showed a little bit about what the Global IDMP Working Group is doing under the UMC, it's working on those pharmaceutical product IDs and the calculation of those, and they will be the governors of those and the owners of those, as well as Global Substance ID. And then this group for the PV, we've not been in contact directly with yet. I imagine this will happen as we move more into the pharmacovigilance space, but the most of the work is really in the lower right-hand corner with both EMA and FDA on the substance identification, substance identifiers, and really going into the nitty-gritty of the modeling of how to unambiguously identify those. And then we have some data sets from the EU SRS, which is proprietary and not openly available like the G-SRS is, but based on the structure of G-SRS is what they're building for the EU. The UNICOM is a European project that is coming to an end, but that will then continue with more funds from the EU. And there we've been looking at the level of national competent authority where really a lot of mapping has to be done. This is pretty EU focused, I have to say, because I've seen some of the questions in the chat that are a little bit more US focused. And certainly that's also worth looking at in terms of mapping. The rest here, there is some work being done there, and also at this ICH level. We've had contact to them through Veda Perkins, but not yet directly, but certainly that might be something for the future. With one more click, you see how we envision putting the IDMP Ontology in the center of all this, just as we're doing for the pharma companies, and to be able to bridge these different areas. Yeah, that pretty much summarized. Up in the right-hand corner is the icon from Citadel. Every time I go to say this, I forget, but I think, Heiner, you knew this, what Citadel stands for.
Call to action, data and health literacy.
Literacy, exactly. And this is also with involvement of, they're supporting that transatlantic workshop for the Global IDMP Working Group with both the FDA and EMA and National Competent Authorities. So that's I think as much as I should go into on that. Here you see at the Pistoia Alliance, what has been starting now and is our main goal for 2024 is that the IDMP Ontology is a foundational product data model that has those IDMP concepts at its basis. And then we'll be looking at, together with the colleagues who have started the clinical operations ontology, and then other colleagues who have started up in ISA S88 ontology for the batch processing. But certainly a lot of that is covered in the IDMP data model, but not all of it. And of course, here we also know we want to, with FDA colleagues, be looking at the PQCMC aspect. I think Asya can talk a lot more about those because she's involved in the governance aspects, the alignment of all of this. And then with this R&D, this is now probably going to be a pharma general ontology that will be an upper level ontology and really looking at how to connect all of them and make sure that we're well aligned. But I think the most important is looking at what is the scope of IDMP, where does the scope stop, and what are the nodes that we can identify that need to be overlapping and connecting. This is the work that's now starting and going on at the Pistoia Alliance. So you see down in the left-hand corner, we initiated this in 2021, and then we kicked off the MVP in April of 2022. And really, we were very fast. We built our MVP in 6 months on substances and had that whole area that you saw in the conceptual data model that was sort of pinkish-orangish, had that covered. And of course, now we've been broadening out over the model while at the same time increasing the depth of each of the domains of that data model. And that was in phase 2, where we really have been looking at the different use cases that the pharma companies said, this is what we need as a minimum to be able to really go into production with version 1.0. And this will be then released in January. And now in phase 3, we really want to ensure adoption of the IDMP standards and using our ontology to support this, the harmonization that needs to happen. And so we'll be focusing on the implementation within each of the sponsoring pharma companies. And especially important to us is increasing the collaboration with the health authorities beyond those use cases that we've been looking at so far to increase that adoption, as well as the interoperability with other domains, and then looking at how we can open up to consultancies really so that we can expand the usage of the standards. And then we'll be introducing an open core model, which will always be open source, and then parts of it that might have to be or will be proprietary for sponsoring, either sponsoring companies or sponsoring anyone, really. And so I think this is a good lead in. I'm not sure what our next slide is, but that collaboration with health authorities is a very good lead into what we also want to talk to you about today. This is just to show that it's really all about collaboration in a pre-competitive manner. What can we do together? How can we bring everyone to, let's say, the team and pull the boat through the water together? And also thinking of that slide with all the different things around the flower, or if you think of that as a table, how can we bring everyone to the table and not fighting for space at the table, but seeing who can cover what, where does what make sense, and really pulling this through together to finally reach a globally harmonized product data model. And here you see our team, and we were just in Boston in November, and this is from that conference, the Pistoia Alliance conference. And this was also very exciting to come together. We had some face-to-face workshops and presented this at the conference. And really what this is all about is like I said, bringing everyone into the table, but also into the story of the development of the IDMP ontology. And with that, I think it would be really good to open up to questions, comments, and any talk about how to move this forward.
All right.